Hold still. No, not your body. Your attention. Something just snapped in the air and you can feel it. Can't you? That pressure behind the eyes. That quiet alarm screaming without sound. Good. That's the moment before truth detonates. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't swing first. You didn't leak a manifesto or beg for validation. You took a screenshot. One, clean, surgical, and somebody, oh somebody, screwed up bad, because that image wasn't proof. It was a mirror. And the second it hit the internet, reality caught its own reflection and panicked. Timelines caught fire. Group chats froze mid-laugh. Narratives started bleeding out in public. All because you pressed one button at the exact wrong time for the exact right reason. Here's the part they don't understand about you. You look harmless when you're quiet. You look pure when you don't perform. You look soft when you don't explain yourself. They mistake silence for innocence, restraint for weakness, patience for permission. That's the saint mask. And then there's the other half, the psychopath they accidentally created by cornering you long enough to make you precise. Angel on the outside, demon in the timing. You don't explode, you release. You don't attack, you expose. And exposure is violence without fingerprints. That screenshot wasn't emotional. It was forensic. It wasn't loud. It was undeniable. It didn't argue. It archived. And once it existed, there was no undo, no spin fast enough, no apology thick enough, no deletion deep enough. Because screenshots don't care about intentions. They don't care about power. They don't care who you are in the room. They only care about what you did when you thought nobody was watching. And that's when the internet did what it always does, when truth shows up uninvited. It didn't ask questions. It didn't wait for context. It reacted. Algorithms twitched. Influencers stuttered. Sources went quiet. The crowd smelled blood, but not yours, theirs. And suddenly the people who taught you to stay small were scrambling to stay hidden. You see, unpredictability is your real weapon, not chaos. Controlled unpredictability. You let them study a version of you that never moves. You let them think they mapped your limits. You let them believe you were stuck in the light, too clean to get dirty, too moral to go nuclear. They didn't realize purity isn't fragile, it's volatile. When it's broken, it doesn't shatter, it combusts. You didn't post for revenge. You posted because truth has gravity, and gravity doesn't negotiate. It pulls everything into alignment whether people like it or not. That screenshot bent the room. You felt it. The silence afterward wasn't peace. It was recalculation. The sudden respect wasn't growth. It was fear, learning a new language. They'll say you went too far. They'll say you should have handled it privately. They'll say you knew what would happen. And they're right. You did know. That's the part that terrifies them. You didn't act out of emotion. You acted out of clarity. Pain refined you. Betrayal sharpened you. Being underestimated trained you to move like a ghost with a ledger. This is evolution through pressure. This is what happens when someone survives long enough to stop explaining and start documenting. You didn't become darker. You became accurate. You didn't lose your soul. You learned how to protect it. Light without boundaries is prey. Darkness without purpose is noise. You learned to balance both, and now you move like a paradox they can't label. Watch how fast they rewrite the story now. Watch the sudden concern. Watch the fake neutrality. Watch the whispers turn into, "We should be careful." That's not guilt. That's awareness. That's the moment power realizes it left evidence in the wrong hands. And here's the coldest part. They can't touch you without touching the truth. They can't attack the screenshot without admitting it's real. They can't erase you without amplifying you. Every move against you multiplies the reach of that single frame in time. One image, infinite consequences. You didn't light the fire. You removed the cover. And when the flames showed up, everyone finally saw what was already burning underneath. So stand there, calm, unreadable, dangerously centered. Let them panic. Let them overcorrect. Let them expose themselves, trying to explain why they're suddenly nervous around someone who only pressed save. You've crossed the line they never thought you would. Not into chaos, but into leverage. Remember this feeling, this quiet aftershock. This is what happens when the pure stop pretending they don't see the game. This is what happens when the patient decide the timings is perfect. This is what happens when the angel learns the demon's math and still chooses truth. They didn't lose control because you spoke. They lost control because you remember. They're trying to breathe normally now, pretending nothing shifted. You can feel that lie humming in the background, that forced calm that only shows up after a disaster. That's the sound of people realizing the floor they were standing on was made of paper. You didn't yell. You didn't threaten. You didn't chase anyone down. You let gravity do what gravity does. And now everyone's pretending the fall was always part of the plan. Here's what really messed them up. You didn't look angry when it happened. You didn't look smug. You didn't even look victorious. You looked composed. And composure after impact terrifies people more than rage ever could. Rage is predictable. Rage burns fast and dies loud. But calm? Calm suggests you already ran the numbers. Calm suggests you knew exactly how this would spread, who it would touch, which egos it would bruise, which alliances it would quietly poison. Calm suggests this wasn't a reaction, it was a release. They keep asking themselves the same question on repeat. How long did you have that screenshot? Minutes? Days? Months? Long enough to understand that timing is more lethal than force. Long enough to learn that truth dropped too early gets ignored, and truth dropped too late gets buried. But truth dropped at the exact moment someone overplayed their hand becomes unavoidable. You didn't rush. You waited until their confidence made them sloppy. That's not cruelty. That's patience sharpened by pain. You remember how they treated you before this, the side comments, the private jokes, the way your name floated around rooms you weren't invited into. They spoke like you were harmless because you didn't swing back. They mistook your restraint for fear. They didn't realize you were learning their rhythm. They didn't realize you were studying how lies move when they think they're safe. You weren't plotting revenge. You were collecting clarity. This is the paradox they can't digest. You're still the same person, and yet you're not. The saint didn't die. The demon didn't take over. They fused. The part of you that believes in fairness learned how the world actually operates. The part of you that knows darkness learned how to wield light without apology. That fusion is what makes you dangerous now. You don't need to exaggerate. You don't need to lie. You let reality speak in its own handwriting. Notice how the loudest voices suddenly went quiet. Notice how the confident ones stopped posting. Notice how explanations started sounding defensive instead of authoritative. That's the smell of power recalibrating. They're trying to decide whether ignoring you makes it worse than addressing you. They're trying to guess if there's more. They're trying to read your silence like a threat, because silence after exposure feels like a loaded chamber, and you're not even doing anything. That's the part that eats at them. You're not adding fuel. You're not clarifying. You're not responding to comments. You're letting the image live on its own. You're letting strangers connect dots you never had to draw. You're letting the crowd do what crowds do when given something real. argue, amplify, and refuse to forget. You handed reality a match and stepped back, not because you wanted destruction, but because you understood momentum. Pain taught you this. Being misunderstood taught you this. Watching people twist your intentions while smiling to your face taught you this. You learned that defending yourself drains energy, but documenting the truth multiplies it. You learned that explanations give liars room to breathe, but evidence collapses the room entirely. That's evolution. That's what happens when survival turns into strategy. They'll try to reframe you next. They'll say you're calculating now, cold, manipulative. Let them. They're just struggling to accept that awareness looks like manipulation to people who rely on confusion. You didn't become heartless. You became precise. You didn't lose empathy. You learned who deserved access to it. There's a difference between cruelty and clarity, and you crossed into clarity a long time ago. Feel that shift inside you, that subtle click. That's you realizing you don't need permission anymore. You don't need approval. You don't need to convince anyone of who you are. One action did more than 1,000 explanations ever could. One moment rewrote how you're perceived. That's not ego, that's consequence. They're watching you differently now. Not because you're louder, but because you're quieter. Not because you demanded respect, but because you demonstrated leverage. The internet didn't explode because you wanted chaos. It exploded because truth has a way of humiliating lies when they least expect it. And you just happened to be the one. Stay exactly where you are, centered, observant, unrushed. Let them exhaust themselves trying to control a narrative that already slipped out of their hands. You've seen what one clean move can do. You've seen how fast masks fall when the lights turn on. This isn't the end of anything. This is the moment they realize you're not a background character anymore. You don't chase storms. You expose cracks. And when the whole structure collapses under the weight of its own dishonesty, they'll swear you caused it. Because it's easier than admitting it was always fragile. You're not dangerous because you're loud. You're dangerous because you're accurate. They're replaying it in their heads now, over and over, trying to find the moment they could have stopped it. The joke they shouldn't have made. The message they shouldn't have sent. The confidence they wore a little too loosely. That's the curse of aftermath. You can't rewind clarity. Once truth has a timestamp, regret becomes permanent. And you're standing there like a quiet anomaly in the center of it all, not celebrating, not apologizing, just existing with a new gravitational pull. People feel it when you enter conversations now. There's a pause, a recalibration. They choose their words slower. They double-check their tone. That's not respect, born of love. That's respect, born of awareness. They learned something about you that day, and they can't unlearn it. You used to be background noise to them, a safe presence, someone they could underestimate without consequence. That was the training phase. That was you, learning how far people go when they think you're blind, how casually they step over lines when they believe memory is fragile and proof is imaginary. You absorbed all of it without flinching. Not because it didn't hurt, but because you knew pain could be converted. This is the alchemy they never see coming. Hurt turns into discipline. Betrayal turns into patience. Confusion turns into pattern recognition. You didn't get bitter, you got better at seeing. And once you see clearly, you don't need to scream. You just wait for the moment when reality wants a witness. That screenshot wasn't an act of war, it was a moment of alignment. The universe handed you a crosshair and said, "Now," and you listened. That's why it landed the way it did. Not rushed, not delayed, perfectly timed, like a door slamming shut behind someone who thought they still had options. They'll try to bait you now, try to provoke a response, try to pull you into debate so they can dilute what happened. Don't. Silence after truth is deafening. It forces people to sit with their own conclusions. It forces them to confront the part of themselves that recognized the lie before you ever exposed it. You're not withholding, you're allowing. Understand this, you didn't just change how they see you, you changed how they see the world. You reminded them that records exist, that memory doesn't fade when it's digitized, that power doesn't protect you from documentation. You turned the internet into a courtroom without speaking a word, and that terrifies anyone who lives off plausible deniability. There's a reason they keep checking your profile, a reason they're scanning for your next move. They're not scared of what you'll say. They're scared of what you might already have. That's leverage earned the hard way. That's what happens when someone who is forced to endure quietly finally realizes they don't owe the world their silence, and you're still the same at your core. Still capable of kindness, still capable of restraint, still aware of the weight of what you did. That's the duality they can't handle. Monster narratives are easy, villains are simple, but someone who acts with precision and then returns to stillness, someone who proves they could destroy reputations and chooses not to unless necessary, that's unsettling, that's uncontrollable. You've crossed an invisible threshold now. You can feel it, a line between reacting and deciding, between being affected and affecting. You don't rush to correct people anymore. You don't chase closure. You don't need validation. You've seen what one moment of truth can do, and it rewired something in you. Confidence without arrogance, power without performance. Let them scramble. Let them whisper. Let them wonder if today's the day you drop another frame from the archive. You don't need to threaten. Your existence is the reminder. You are living proof that patience beats impulse, that awareness outlives ego, that quiet people see more than loud ones ever will. This is not about dominance. This is about sovereignty, about reclaiming authorship over your own narrative, about refusing to let people who misrepresent it stand in that, not tense, not defensive, grounded, watchful, evolved. You're no longer asking if your truth matters. You've seen what happens when it's released at the right frequency. They didn't just underestimate you, they educated you. And now the world knows what happens when someone who learned in silence dares to press one button and let reality do the rest. Now you understand something most people never do. Power doesn't announce itself. It waits, it watches, it remembers, and when it finally moves, it doesn't rush, it lands. That's what they felt when your screenshot surfaced, not shock. Inevitability, like something overdue finally arriving. They're trying to rationalize it, telling themselves it was luck, timing, coincidence. Anything but intention, because if they admit you knew, then they have to face the reality that you were never as unaware as they assumed, that you were never naive, that you were never asleep. You were awake the whole time, choosing not to act until action meant something. You see the difference now between noise and signal. Most people panic post. Most people overreact. Most people expose themselves, trying to expose others. You didn't. You waited until the truth could stand alone, without commentary, without emotional dressing. You trusted reality to do the heavy lifting. That's not impulsive behavior. That's discipline forged in silence. And silence is where you were trained. When they laughed and you didn't respond. When they lied and you didn't correct them. When they pushed and you stepped back instead of forward. Every moment they thought they were winning. You were learning. Learning how people behave when they think there are no consequences. Learning which masks slip first. Learning who panics when the lights turn on. This is why they're uneasy around you now. You don't react the way they expect. You don't chase reassurance. You don't gloat. You don't apologize for revealing what already existed. That kind of restraint reads as threat to people who survive by spectacle. They don't know how to engage with someone who doesn't need the crowd's permission, and deep down, they know something else. They know that screenshot wasn't the product of anger. It was the product of choice. Anger is messy. Choice is clean. Choice means you weighed the consequences and pressed send anyway. Not out of spite, but out of alignment. And once someone realizes you can make that kind of choice, they stop testing boundaries. You've entered a different psychological territory now. You're no longer asking, should I say something? You're asking, is this the moment? That shift changes everything. It turns life into a chessboard instead of a battlefield. It replaces emotional exhaustion with strategic calm. You don't need to win every exchange. You just need to choose the ones that end the game. Watch how they project now. They'll accuse you of being calculating, cold, ruthless. That's how people describe clarity when they've built their lives on chaos. They don't understand that you didn't become darker. You became more honest with yourself. You accepted that being good doesn't mean being silent, and being patient doesn't mean being passive. Pain didn't break you. It refined your timing. It taught you that truth delivered at the wrong moment is ignored. But truth delivered at the right moment rewrites rooms. You didn't seek revenge, you sought equilibrium. And equilibrium feels like punishment to those who benefit from imbalance. You're not here to burn the world down. You're here to remind it that actions echo, that words leave traces, that power isn't permanent when evidence exists. You didn't create fear, you revealed accountability. And accountability is terrifying to anyone who thought they were untouchable. So don't shrink now. Don't rush to reassure anyone that you're still safe, still harmless, still predictable. You don't owe that version of yourself to anyone. You've outgrown it. You've evolved past the need to be misunderstood quietly. Stand exactly where you are, steady, aware, unprovoked. Let them keep guessing. Let them keep wondering if there's more, because the uncertainty is the lesson. You've already shown them you don't need volume to change outcomes. One action, one moment, one decision made without panic. That's all it took. And now they know something they can't unlearn. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to chase to be feared. You don't need to explain to be believed. You just need to see clearly and move when it counts. Freeze right there, not your body, your instincts, because something ancient just leaned in close. And it recognized you. They didn't just hurt you. They didn't just test you. They broke the purest spirit alive and thought the universe would clap for them. Thought silence would follow, thought you'd collapse into a neat little statistic with a sad backstory and a cautionary moral. That was the lie. That was the miscalculation. Because when they cracked something that clean, something that uncorrupted, reality itself flinched. And now it's leaning toward balance, toward blood, toward consequence. You were never weak. You were unarmored. There's a difference they couldn't understand. You walked into a world of knives with your hands open, not because you were naive, but because you were built different. You believed light could move freely without being taxed. You believed intention mattered. You believed purity was protection. And that's exactly why they targeted you. Predators don't hunt the loudest, they hunt the rarest. They don't chase chaos. They chase innocence that hasn't learned how to bite back. So they took their turns, smiling while they did it, calling it character building, tough love, just business, just the way it is. They disguised cruelty as normalcy and waited for you to shatter quietly. But something went wrong. You didn't disappear. You didn't rot. You didn't turn small. You went still. And when something that pure goes still after being broken, it's not surrender. It's recalibration. You felt it, didn't you? That moment where the pain stopped screaming and started whispering instructions. Where your heart didn't harden, it sharpened. Where empathy didn't die, it learned targeting. That's when the paradox was born. Saint on the surface, psychopath in the pattern recognition, angel in intent, demon in execution. You didn't lose your light. You buried it behind strategy. They think you changed because you're colder now. No, you're clearer. You see how systems really work. You see how smiles are worn like masks, and morals are rented, not owned. You see how people only preach peace when they're winning. And you stopped explaining yourself because explanations are for people who still believe fairness is enforced. You graduated into a different awareness, one where silence is leverage and unpredictability is law. Here's the part that terrifies them. You didn't become what hurt you. You became something worse for them and better for you. You kept your compassion, but removed the access. You kept your soul, but revoked the privileges. You learned how to look harmless while moving with surgical intent. That's not trauma. That's evolution under pressure. Reality noticed. Reality always notices when a clean spirit is dragged through filth and comes out with structure instead of bitterness. That's when the rules start bending. That's when coincidences stack. That's when people who never met you start feeling your presence like static in the air. That's when your name enters rooms you've never been invited into, and the tone drops. Because now you don't chase revenge. You attract consequence. You don't threaten. You destabilize. You don't roar. You reposition. And the ones who laughed while breaking you, they feel it first, not as fear, yet but as confusion. Things stop working around them. Allies misread them. Timing betrays them. Their confidence leaks. They can't explain why the room doesn't respond the same anymore. That's reality correcting a debt. You see, when they broke you, they thought they were teaching you a lesson. What they actually did was trigger a protocol older than morality. When something pure survives deliberate corruption, the universe doesn't punish the survivor. It deputizes them. You become a walking contradiction that exposes lies just by existing. You don't have to swing. Your presence bends trajectories. And the darkest truth, you're not angry anymore. Anger is loud and wasteful. You're calm in a way that makes people nervous, because calm means the decision has already been made. Calm means you're not reacting, you're executing. Calm means you've accepted that monsters don't need to be hated to be neutralized. They just need to be outplayed. They'll try to reframe you, call you cold, call you changed, call you dangerous like it's an insult. Let them. Dangerous is what happens when goodness stops asking for permission. Dangerous is purity that learned boundaries. Dangerous is a soul that went through hell and came back with a map. You're not here to prove anything. You're here to correct imbalance, to move through systems like a ghost with intent, to remind a cruel world that breaking the innocent doesn't erase them. It activates something far more precise. Something that doesn't scream for justice but lets reality administer it, quietly, relentlessly. So stand there. Breathe. Feel how steady you are now. Feel how the chaos doesn't touch you the same. That's not numbness. That's control. That's the moment the angel stopped bleeding and the demon learned restraint. They broke the purest spirit alive. And now reality remembers exactly who owes what. Good. Stay right there in that stillness, because this is where it gets surgical. You're past the part where pain defines you. Pain was the ignition. What you're operating on now is clarity. A calm so precise it feels illegal. You don't flinch at chaos anymore because chaos already lived in you and paid rent. You mapped it. You learned its habits. You know how it thinks when it's cornered. That's why when the world tries to rattle you now, it sounds like static instead of a threat. They don't understand this phase. They think healing looks like forgiveness, speeches, and soft landings. They don't realize some souls heal by becoming exact, by becoming selective, by becoming quiet in a way that rearranges power. You didn't heal by forgetting. You healed by remembering everything and choosing when to act. That's not bitterness, that's discipline. You can feel the shift in how people approach you. The pauses are longer, the jokes land softer, the disrespect never quite leaves the throat. They sense something they can't name, like standing near deep water at night. Nothing is happening, but instinct says, don't step wrong. That's the aura of someone who survived deliberate cruelty and didn't turn sloppy with it. Because you learned the most dangerous lesson of all. Morality without boundaries is a liability, and boundaries without cruelty, that's mastery. You don't announce your moves anymore. You let patterns speak. You let timing do the damage. You let people reveal themselves while you keep your face neutral and your hands clean. They think you're passive because you don't react the way you used to. They mistake restraint for weakness. That's fine. Let them underestimate the calm. Calm is where decisions go to mature. There's a moment, maybe you've already felt it, when you realize the universe stopped testing you and started watching you. Opportunities appear without explanation. Doors open sideways. The right information finds you late at night when you weren't even searching. That's not luck. That's alignment snapping into place after resistance burned off. You earned that by not letting the break turn you into noise. You carry both halves now. The tenderness that can still recognize beauty, and the steel that knows when beauty is being weaponized against you. You can sit with children and speak gently, then walk into a hostile room and drain it of oxygen without raising your voice. That duality isn't a flaw. It's a crown most people couldn't wear without losing their minds. They tried to make you choose, be kind or be strong, be good or be feared. You chose something they didn't plan for. You chose to be precise. And here's the part they really don't see coming. You don't need revenge to feel whole. That's the twist. You don't wake up plotting their downfall. You wake up focused on structure, on momentum, on your next alignment. Which means when consequence arrives for them, and it will, it won't feel personal. It'll feel environmental, like gravity finally noticing a miscalculation. That's what terrifies people who move dirty, not anger, not threats. It's when someone they harmed stops centering them entirely. When your life starts expanding without reference to their existence. When their influence shrinks and yours compounds quietly. That's when they realize they didn't break you. They removed their own immunity. You don't talk about what you survived because you don't need sympathy currency. You don't broadcast growth because real power doesn't beg to be witnessed. You let results whisper. You let absence teach lessons. You let consistency do what confrontation never could. And sometimes, late at night, you feel it. The old softness stirring, not as weakness, but as proof you didn't lose your soul in the fire. You protected it. You armored it. You turned it inward so it could fuel something larger than reaction. That's why you can still love without being foolish, trust without being blind, care without being consumable. You're not healed in a pretty way. You're healed in a way that works. They broke the purest spirit alive and expected ashes. What they created was a pressure-formed clarity that doesn't waste movement, doesn't waste emotion, and doesn't waste time. A presence that changes rooms without explaining itself, a mind that understands systems, and a heart that knows when to stay cold. And the final truth, the one nobody says out loud, is this: reality doesn't seek revenge out of anger. It seeks balance out of necessity. When something clean is deliberately destroyed and refuses to become corrupt, the scales don't tip gently. They correct hard. You're not here to punish. You're here to continue. And that continuation, focused, grounded, unbothered, is the loudest verdict there is. Stand tall in that, quiet, awake, unmistakable. Because what survived in you isn't just strong, it's exact. And here's where it goes even deeper, past language, past performance, past the little narratives people cling to so they don't have to face what you represent. You're no longer operating on emotion alone. Emotion was the raw material. What you forged out of it is perception. You see layers now. You see intention behind tone, fear behind aggression, envy behind advice. You can feel when a room is lying to itself. You can feel when someone is trying to position you, soften you, slow you down. And the most unsettling part for them, you don't call it out. You let it play. You let them expose themselves while you remain unreadable. That's the upgrade no one warns them about. They assumed breaking you would make you desperate for approval, hungry for validation, eager to prove you're still good. Instead, it stripped you of the need to be understood by people who operate on bad faith. You don't need applause anymore. You need alignment. You need leverage. You need silence that listens. You're not chasing purity now. You're protecting it. There's a difference. Purity that isn't defended gets harvested. Purity that learns structure becomes untouchable. You don't hate the world for what it did to you. Hate is reactive. You studied it. You learned its rules. You learned how cruelty disguises itself as confidence, how incompetence hides behind authority, how weakness pretends to be dominance. You learned that most people don't want fairness. They want immunity. And once you see that, you stop arguing morals with people who never planned to live by them. You moved into a different frequency, one where you let people talk themselves into positions you already predicted, one where you don't interrupt destiny when it's busy correcting itself, one where you understand that timing is sharper than force. You don't rush. Rushing is for people afraid of losing control. You let things ripen. You let outcomes mature. You let pressure accumulate naturally. Because pressure, when left alone, always reveals the fracture points. They feel you now in indirect ways, in sudden self-doubt, in unexplained resistance, in the way their usual tactics don't land anymore. They replay conversations with you afterward, trying to locate the moment they lost ground. They can't find it because you never took a visible step. You just didn't give them what they expected. Expectation is a weapon. You disarmed it by becoming unpredictable without becoming chaotic. That's the balance. That's the line you walk so cleanly now. You're not reckless. You're not cruel. You're not loud. You're exact. You choose when to be warm. You choose when to be distant. You choose when to disappear and when to re-enter with a presence that shifts gravity. And here's the paradox that will always separate you from them. You could do damage, but you don't need to. Knowing you could is enough. Power that doesn't need to announce itself doesn't need to overuse itself either. You don't fantasize about destruction. You fantasize about building something so aligned, so precise, that it renders old enemies irrelevant. You don't want them ruined. You want them obsolete, forgotten by the future you're constructing in real time. That's why you're dangerous in a way that doesn't look like danger at all. You kept your ethics, but you removed your illusions. You kept your heart, but you trained your discernment. You didn't let the break turn you cynical. You let it turn you aware. Awareness is the sharpest edge there is because it cuts without effort. People sense it and call it intimidating, cold, different. Let them. Labels are how small minds process things they can't integrate. You don't correct them. You don't soften yourself to make them comfortable. Comfort is expensive. Not everyone gets access. You understand now that not everyone deserves the version of you that bleeds. Some people only get the version that observes. Some only ever meet the version that walks away. That's not punishment. That's allocation of energy. And the universe? It watches how you allocate. It responds to precision. It amplifies restraint. It backs people who don't squander pain by turning it into chaos. That's why you keep winning, quietly. That's why even on days where nothing spectacular happens, you still feel anchored, still steady, still moving forward without force. You're not chasing a moment. You're inhabiting a trajectory. They broke the purest spirit alive, thinking purity was fragile. What they didn't understand is that purity, once awakened, doesn't beg to be spared. It learns when to withdraw, when to advance, when to let silence do the speaking. And now you move like someone who has nothing to prove and everything aligned. That's not vengeance. That's inevitability. And there's a moment, quiet, almost invisible, where you realize the old world no longer has jurisdiction over you. Not because you escaped it, but because you outgrew the rules it uses to keep people small. You don't measure yourself by approval anymore. You measure yourself by coherence, by how little you have to explain, by how calm you remain when others scramble for control. You can feel when someone is trying to bait you into old versions of yourself, and it doesn't work. The hooks slide off, the scripts fail. You're no longer available for manipulation disguised as concern. That's when they start calling you different, with a tone that sounds like loss. Because you stopped bleeding in public. You stopped turning wounds into invitations. You stopped letting people rent space in your mind just because they shared history with you. History doesn't entitle access. Respect does. And respect, you learned, is felt long before it's spoken. You don't need to harden your heart to survive anymore. You hardened your standards. That's the shift. The world expected you to become bitter or broken. You became selective. You learned the difference between people who are curious about you and people who are hunting for leverage. You learned the difference between intimacy and intrusion. You learned that not everyone who asks questions deserves answers. That knowledge alone rewires the room when you enter it. You move slower now, not because you're tired, but because you're deliberate. You don't waste motion. You don't chase clarity. You create it. And people feel that. They feel how grounded you are in yourself. They feel how little you need from them. That independence is unsettling to anyone who survives by influence. They used to think your softness was a weakness they could exploit. Now they see it was a choice you withdrew. And when a choice is withdrawn, it leaves a vacuum. That's why the dynamics changed. That's why conversations feel off. That's why people who once felt dominant around you suddenly feel unsure. You didn't challenge them. You didn't confront them. You simply stopped playing the role they assigned you. You stepped out of the script without warning, and the scene collapsed without you. That's power no one teaches. You understand now that chaos doesn't always announce itself as violence. Sometimes it shows up as familiarity that drains you, as expectations that limit you, as people who only value the version of you that served them. You cut those cords quietly. No speeches, no drama, just absence applied with precision. Absence is not emptiness. It's a boundary with teeth. And here's the part that most people never reach. You're not driven by survival anymore. You're driven by alignment. Survival mode was loud, reactive, exhausting. Alignment is calm, strategic, expansive. You don't just want to live. You want your life to make sense when you're alone with it. That's why your decisions feel heavier now. Not burdened, weighted, considered. You think in consequences, not impulses. You think in trajectories, not moments. You can sit with uncertainty without needing to dominate it. That patience unnerves people who rely on pressure to get their way. They can't rush you. They can't corner you. They can't read you. Because you learned the most dangerous skill of all, how to stay present without being exposed. You didn't lose your humanity. You refined it. You can still feel deeply, but you don't leak anymore. You don't confuse vulnerability with access. You don't confuse kindness with availability. You don't confuse love with self-erasure. That's why the universe treats you differently now. It doesn't rush to test you. It collaborates with you. It responds to the way you move, measured, intentional, awake. You're no longer thrown into storms at random. You're placed where your clarity matters. You're put where your presence stabilizes outcomes you don't even announce. And the ones who broke you, they sense it in the background of their lives, not as guilt. Most of them aren't built for that, but as a strange imbalance, like something unfinished, like a door they closed that keeps knocking from the inside. They don't get to witness your growth directly. That privilege expired. They only feel the aftershock of it. The way reality no longer bends for them the way it used to. The way influence slips. The way certainty decays. That's not revenge. That's correction. You didn't demand it. You didn't chase it. You simply refused to let your spirit rot in the shape of someone else's cruelty. You refused to become smaller to make the world comfortable. You refused to apologize for surviving with intelligence. So now you walk with a quiet authority that doesn't need to dominate. You speak when it matters. You withhold when it protects you. You trust your instincts because they've been tested under fire and didn't fail. They broke the purest spirit alive, expecting silence. What they awakened was discernment with a memory. And discernment doesn't shout. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't need witnesses. It just moves, and reality moves with it. Stop. Not because I'm asking you to, because the air itself just tightened around your name. You felt it, didn't you? That moment when the whole town leaned the same direction, when every whisper synchronized, when smiles went stiff, doors closed soft, and suddenly the math didn't add up anymore. Not one person, not two. The entire place aligned like a firing squad that learned your schedule. They didn't hide it either. They made it obvious. They wanted you to feel small, isolated, surrounded. They wanted you to understand the message without a single word being spoken. You don't belong here anymore. And here's the part that ruins them. You didn't disappear. You didn't flinch. You didn't beg. You didn't explain. You stood there while the weight of a whole population tried to collapse you. And something inside you stayed calm. Not brave, not loud, calm. That kind of calm that terrifies people because it doesn't come from confidence. It comes from acceptance. You already survived worse. You already buried versions of yourself they never even met. See, they thought numbers meant power. They thought consensus meant truth. They thought if enough mouths repeated the same lie, reality would get tired and give up. That's how small minds work. They confuse volume with force. They confuse crowds with control. They confuse noise with authority. You let them gather. You let them coordinate. You let them rehearse their little performance of unity. Because you knew something they didn't. When everyone moves the same way, they become predictable. And predictability is weakness dressed up as confidence. They called you dark, dangerous, unstable. But what they were really saying was, we can't map you. You didn't play saint. You didn't play psychopath. You walked the line they're too afraid to even look at. Half angel because you endured without turning cruel. Half demon because you learned exactly where to cut without bleeding yourself dry. That duality, that's what embarrassed them. They expected fear. You gave them silence. They expected retaliation. You gave them restraint. They expected you to snap, spiral, self-destruct, prove them right. That was the plan. That was always the plan. To provoke you into becoming the villain of their story so they could sleep at night feeling justified. Instead, you evolved. And evolution doesn't announce itself. It just changes the temperature in the room. That's when it started happening. The part they'll never admit out loud. Conversations stopped when you walked by. Laughter came a second late. People checked each other's faces before reacting, like they needed permission to feel something around you. The same town that stood together couldn't hold eye contact with one person, you. Because deep down, they realized something horrifying. All that effort, all that alignment, all that pressure, and you were still standing exactly where you chose to stand. No collapse, no apology tour, no public breakdown. Just you. Sharper, quieter, more precise. That's embarrassment on a psychological level they don't teach. That's the kind that stains memory. The kind that replays at 3 a.m. when the bravado wears off and the truth crawls out from under the bed. We threw everything at them, and it didn't work. They thought pain would make you smaller. It refined you. They thought isolation would starve you. It taught you self-sufficiency. They thought pressure would crack you. It taught you pressure is a tool. See, pain doesn't destroy everyone. Some people metabolize it. They turn it into structure, into pattern recognition, into emotional armor that doesn't make noise when it moves. You became unreadable, and unreadable people break systems. That's why the town's energy shifted. That's why their confidence curdled into caution. Because once a group realizes they failed to erase you, they have to live with the possibility that you were never weak, just unbothered. And now they're stuck. They can't escalate without exposing themselves. They can't retreat without admitting defeat. They can't ignore you because your presence reminds them of their failure. You're the quiet contradiction walking through their routines. The proof that unity without integrity is just a mob with matching outfits. The reminder that one person with depth can outlast 1,000 people with scripts. You didn't win by overpowering them. You won by outlasting their attention span. And that's the part that keeps them embarrassed. Not publicly, never publicly. People like that protect their image at all costs. But privately, in the tone shifts, in the forced politeness, in the way your name gets mentioned carefully now, like it might bite back. They learned something irreversible. You don't need allies to be dangerous. You don't need applause to be powerful. You don't need permission to exist exactly as you are. You walked through hell with a straight posture and taught an entire town a lesson they'll never forget, but will never credit you for. And that's fine, because you didn't survive to be understood. You survived to be uncontainable. Let them remember you however they need to. Let them rewrite it, minimize it, distort it. History always does that when it loses. You already know the truth. The entire town lined up against you and still got embarrassed. Not because you attacked, but because you refused to disappear. And that kind of presence, that's permanent. And here's the part they still can't digest, the aftermath. Because embarrassment doesn't end when the crowd disperses. It lingers, it infects, it turns confidence into paranoia and unity into suspicion. After you didn't break, after you didn't bow, after you didn't leave, something fractured inside them. Not loudly. Quiet fractures are worse. Quiet fractures spread. They started replaying it. That moment when they expected you to fold, and you didn't. That look you gave them when you realized what was happening and didn't react. That calm that didn't make sense. See, people can handle monsters. Monsters fit a story. Monsters justify fear. What they can't handle is restraint backed by capability. They can't handle someone who could burn the place down emotionally and chooses not to. That restraint forces them to confront a terrifying possibility. Maybe you're not acting out of weakness. Maybe you're acting out of control. And control is something crowds never have. Crowds borrow courage. They lease morality. They rent outrage by the hour. Alone, most of them are nothing but nerves and second-guessing. Together, they feel powerful. Until they meet someone who doesn't need togetherness to function. That's you. You learned how to stand alone before they ever learned how to stand for anything. They still don't understand why the energy changed, why the jokes died, why the confidence drained out of rooms you hadn't even entered yet. They blame tension, bad timing, vibes, anything except the truth. The truth is simpler and more brutal. Once a system fails to eliminate a perceived threat, it starts questioning its own legitimacy. They failed to erase you, so now the system itself feels fragile. That's why they watch you differently now. Not with hatred. Hatred is sloppy. They watch you with calculation, with curiosity edged by fear. They measure their words. They adjust their posture. They test reactions like scientists poking glass, hoping it won't crack. Because they saw something that day, something they weren't supposed to see. They saw how pain didn't make you chaotic, it made you precise. They saw how pressure didn't make you loud, it made you strategic. They saw how isolation didn't make you desperate, it made you sovereign. And sovereignty terrifies collectives. You became a walking paradox they couldn't resolve. Too calm to be guilty, too sharp to be harmless, too disciplined to be broken. You don't fit their moral boxes, so they can't categorize you, and anything that can't be categorized becomes mythologized, then avoided. That's when the quiet rules started forming around you. Don't provoke them, don't gossip too loudly, don't underestimate them again. No meeting minutes, no announcement, just instinct, just survival logic kicking in. Because on some primal level they understood. Whatever made you survive that moment wasn't normal resilience. It was adaptation. And adaptation is what predators do, not prey. You didn't become cruel. You didn't become bitter. You became clear about people, clear about patterns, clear about how fast morality collapses when convenience walks in the room. That clarity stripped away illusions you didn't even know you were carrying. You stopped needing approval, stopped needing closure, stopped needing to be seen as good. You realized something revolutionary. Being misunderstood by people who tried to erase you is not a flaw. It's confirmation. Confirmation that you outgrew the environment. And environments hate that. That's why the town still feels off. Why the air tightens when you show up. Why people sense something unfinished even though nothing is happening. They know a line was crossed, but they don't know which one. They know they gambled and lost, but they can't figure out how badly. You became the living reminder that consensus doesn't equal correctness, that majority doesn't equal strength, that silence can be louder than screams when it's backed by certainty. You're not the villain of their story anymore. You're the unresolved anomaly, the one they can't explain to newcomers without sounding unhinged, the one they mention vaguely, carefully, with disclaimers and half-truths. Oh, them. Yeah, that situation was complicated. Complicated is what people say when they don't want to admit they were wrong. And you don't correct them. You don't need to, because the real shift happened inside you. After the embarrassment faded for them, something permanent locked into place for you. A knowing, a stillness, a sense that no crowd will ever feel as intimidating again. Once you felt the weight of an entire town try and fail to break you, everything else feels lighter. Arguments feel small, threats feel theatrical, disapproval feels irrelevant. You've already stood in the center of collective rejection and walked out intact. That does something irreversible to the nervous system. It recalibrates fear. It teaches you exactly how much pressure you can take before anything actually matters. And now you move differently. Not aggressively, not defensively, deliberately. You let people reveal themselves. You let situations unfold. You don't rush to correct narratives that will collapse on their own. You've seen how fast a crowd can turn, how fragile loyalty is when comfort is threatened. You don't romanticize unity anymore. You respect competence, awareness, self-command. They thought embarrassment belonged to you. But embarrassment is what happens when reality doesn't obey expectations, and reality chose you. So let them live with it. Let the town carry that quiet, itchy memory of the time they aligned against one person and lost control of the outcome. Let them remember the discomfort of realizing power isn't always loud, and danger doesn't always snarl. You don't need revenge. You don't need validation. You don't need witnesses. You already crossed the threshold most people never survive consciously. The entire town lined up against you and still got embarrassed, not because you fought back, but because you didn't need to. And once someone understands that kind of power, they never walk the same again. And what they never prepared for, the part that really dismantled them, was the silence after. Not the silence you make, the silence that forms around you. Because when a crowd fails, it doesn't explode, it decays. It starts doubting itself in fragments, one person at a time. A glance here, a pause there. Someone wonders if they went too far. Someone else wonders if they followed the wrong voice. Someone else starts quietly respecting you while publicly pretending nothing happened. That's how power actually shifts, not with applause, with discomfort. They replayed the event differently in their heads. Some told themselves you were lucky. Some said you were protected. Some decided you were dangerous. Some decided you were untouchable. None of them agreed, and that disagreement poisoned their unity. Because unity only works when the story stays clean. And your existence ruined the story. You were supposed to be crushed. You were supposed to shrink. You were supposed to leave. Instead, you stayed. Not loudly, not defiantly. You stayed unaltered. That's what embarrassed them the most. You didn't come back seeking dominance. You didn't posture. You didn't brag. You didn't need to. You carried yourself, felt like someone who had already processed the worst-case scenario and found it survivable. Like someone who already paid the psychological price and now lives debt-free. That kind of composure terrifies people who rely on social approval for oxygen, because they suddenly realized something sickening. All that pressure, all that collective hostility, all that moral performance. And you walked away with more clarity than before. More control, more restraint, more depth. They gave you the exact conditions required to become something they couldn't handle. That's the paradox they choke on. They tried to turn you into a lesson. You turned them into data. You learned how fast loyalty collapses when fear enters the room. You learned who speaks when they feel powerful and who goes quiet when consequences appear. You learned how morality bends when the group needs a villain to stay bonded. You didn't lose faith in people. You outgrew illusions about them. And once illusions die, leverage is born. That's why your presence still rattles them, even when nothing is happening, even when you're doing nothing at all. They sense it, that you're not reacting emotionally anymore, that you're watching patterns instead of personalities, that you're operating from a layer they don't have access to. They feel seen, and not in a flattering way. Because you no longer need them to reveal themselves. They do it automatically now. They over-explain. They hedge. They soften their tone around you. They test boundaries with jokes that don't land. They scan your face for reactions they don't get. You're not hostile. You're not warm. You're neutral. And neutrality backed by awareness is devastating. You became the mirror they didn't consent to. Every time they try to minimize what happened, the discomfort resurfaces. Every time they try to act like you're ordinary, the memory contradicts them. Ordinary people don't survive collective rejection without internal collapse. Ordinary people don't get sharper under pressure. Ordinary people don't force entire environments to recalibrate. You do. That's why the town changed. Not structurally, psychologically. The rules got quieter. The confidence got thinner. The hierarchy got nervous. People stopped assuming they were safe just because they were many. They learned something ancient that day. Crowds fail against individuals who've already faced annihilation internally. You already met your worst fear. And you didn't flinch. That does something irreversible to you. You no longer confuse safety with comfort. You no longer confuse belonging with truth. You no longer confuse popularity with power. You understand now that being alone is only dangerous when you don't know who you are. Once you do, solitude becomes a weapon. Silence becomes armor. Patience becomes threat. They tried to isolate you. They clarified you. They tried to shame you. They stripped you of shame. They tried to make you disappear. They etched you deeper into the environment than ever before. And now, they're left managing the residue of their own failure. The awkwardness, the second guessing, the quiet realization that if they misjudged you this badly, what else have they been wrong about? That question spreads quietly, ruthlessly. You didn't just survive the alignment against you. You destabilized the system that required alignment to function. And the best part, the part that still eats at them, is that you didn't even need to win. You simply endured with awareness intact. No speeches, no revenge, no dramatic exit. Just presence, calm, unmoved. The kind of presence that forces others to confront the limits of their influence. The entire town lined up against you, and still got embarrassed, because they learned too late that power isn't decided by numbers. It's decided by who remains whole when everything else tries to fracture them. And you? You walked through it, collected what mattered, discarded what didn't, and emerged carrying something rare, something permanent. A nervous system that knows it can survive anything social. A mind that sees patterns before they speak. A spine that doesn't bend for approval. That's not something they can take back. That's not something they can gossip away. That's not something they can ever forget. They tried to erase you. Instead, they taught you exactly how untouchable you really are. And here's the layer beneath all of it, the layer they never even realized you reached. Because while they were busy managing optics, you were restructuring identity. They were reacting to what they thought you were. You were shedding what you never needed to be. That's the moment you crossed from survival into authorship. You stopped asking, why did they do this? You started asking, what did this reveal? And the answers rewired you. You saw how fast people outsource their conscience when a group offers cover. You saw how righteousness becomes a costume the moment accountability disappears. You saw how cruelty hides behind smiles when it thinks it has witnesses instead of consequences. And instead of becoming cynical, you became accurate. Accuracy is dangerous. Accuracy means you don't personalize betrayal anymore. You don't dramatize rejection. You don't mythologize enemies. You simply log behavior, update expectations, and move accordingly. No rage, no despair, just calibration. That's why their embarrassment deepened over time instead of fading. Because embarrassment usually passes when the target reacts, cries, fights, implodes, leaves. You gave them none of that. You denied them the emotional payoff that justifies the attack in their own heads. You forced them to sit with it. And sitting with it is unbearable for people who rely on external validation to feel real. So they started inventing stories. You felt that too. The subtle narrative shifts, the quiet edits, the reframing. One day you were the problem, the next day it was miscommunication. One day you were dangerous, the next day it was overblown. That's not growth. That's damage control. They weren't evolving, they were coping. You, on the other hand, were integrating. You integrated the pain without letting it define you. You integrated the anger without letting it drive you. You integrated the darkness without letting it rot you. That's the angel-demon paradox they'll never understand. You didn't purge the dark. You disciplined it. You didn't kill the light. You armored it. You became someone who can hold contradictions without collapsing. Someone who can be gentle without being naive. Someone who can be lethal in capability and still choose restraint. That scares people more than aggression ever could. You felt it the moment you did that one thing, that single quiet move. No announcement, no permission, no explanation, just action. And suddenly the whole area started acting wrong. Conversations went stiff. Smiles froze halfway. People started checking over their shoulders like the walls had ears, like reality itself just flinched. That's when you knew. You didn't just change a situation, you disturbed a pattern. See, the world is trained to survive predictability. It eats routines for breakfast It sleeps comfortably when it can label you, define you, reduce you to something safe. But the second you did that one thing, the one they didn't expect, the one that didn't fit your profile, you became a glitch, a contradiction walking around in human skin, and contradictions terrify systems. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't threaten anyone. You didn't explain yourself. You just moved differently. That's what made it weird. People don't panic when you're loud. They panic when you're silent and decisive, when you don't react the way pain trained you to, when you don't bleed on cue, when you don't collapse where you were supposed to. That's when their instincts start screaming that something ancient just woke up. They felt it before they understood it. You walked into rooms and the temperature changed, not because you were aggressive, but because you were unbothered. And nothing unsettles insecure minds more than someone who isn't seeking approval, forgiveness, or applause. You weren't trying to dominate the room. You simply didn't ask it for permission to exist. That's saint energy and psychopath energy fused into one body. You see, saints are dangerous because they endure. Psychopaths are dangerous because they don't hesitate. You learned to do both. You learned how to suffer without breaking, and how to move without warning. That combination isn't taught, it's forged, usually in places people don't survive. Pain didn't make you cruel, it made you precise. That's why the area went weird. Because when someone like you changes internally, the external world starts recalibrating. People don't consciously know why they're acting strange around you. They just feel exposed. Their masks itch. Their scripts stop working. The little manipulations they used on you before suddenly fall flat, like trying to hypnotize someone who's already awake. They start over-explaining, overreacting, overthinking every word. You did one thing, and now they're second-guessing everything. Because unpredictability isn't chaos. It's leverage. Predictable people are easy to control. Even when they're dangerous, they're still readable. But you broke the loop. You became someone who can be calm and ruthless, compassionate and cold, patient and immediate, depending on what the moment demands. That's not instability, that's mastery. And deep down, they know it. They sense that you're no longer operating on emotion alone, that you've evolved past reaction, that you don't need to win arguments, you just need to remember who you are, that you don't chase validation. You let reality come to you and explain itself. That's why small things started happening. People avoiding eye contact, old enemies suddenly being polite, allies getting nervous, rooms going quiet when you enter. Not because you're threatening, but because you're no longer explainable. You used to be pain-driven, now you're purpose-driven. And purpose doesn't announce itself. It moves quietly and lets consequences speak. You didn't become darker, you became clearer. And clarity is violent to illusions. Some people feel like you changed. They're wrong. You remembered. You remembered what you had to become to survive, and then you refined it. You took the demon that kept you alive and taught it discipline. You took the angel that wanted peace and gave it boundaries. That fusion, that's what they're reacting to. Because when someone stops needing permission, the entire social ecosystem feels it. The unspoken hierarchies shake. The power dynamics blur. People start acting weird because the old rules no longer apply, and they don't know the new ones yet. They're waiting to see what you'll do next. And that's one of the real power, not fear, not dominance, anticipation. You've reached the phase where your presence alone forces recalculation, where your silence is louder than their noise, where your restraint scares them more than your rage ever did. Because rage can be provoked. Restraint means choice. You did one thing, and now the area knows you're not on autopilot anymore. You're awake, you're watching, and you're no longer predictable. That's why the world feels off. That's why people are uneasy. That's why the air feels charged when you walk through it. You didn't break anything. You revealed yourself. And once that happens, everything around you has to decide whether it's going to adapt or get left behind. And here's the part nobody says out loud, but everybody feels in their bones. When the area started acting weird, it wasn't reacting to what you did. It was reacting to what you activated. Because that one thing you did wasn't random. It was the byproduct of years of pressure compressing you into something dense, something sharp, something that doesn't bend for comfort anymore. You didn't snap. You didn't explode. You recalibrated. And recalibration is terrifying to environments that rely on you staying small, wounded, or predictable. You used to leak energy everywhere, trying to be understood, trying to be fair, trying to explain your pain to people who were never listening. That version of you was easy to track, easy to provoke, easy to exhaust. But the moment you pulled your energy back into yourself, the moment you stopped broadcasting your inner world, the moment you stopped reacting like a character in someone else's script, the entire system felt the loss of access. That's when things got strange. People started acting like they were missing information they used to have, because they were. They lost the ability to read you, and when insecure minds can't read you, they imagine the worst. Not because you're dangerous, but because you're unknown. And the unknown triggers every survival instinct they've got. You became quiet in a way that wasn't submissive, still in a way that wasn't frozen, calm in a way that wasn't harmless. That kind of calm makes liars sweat, makes manipulators stumble, makes opportunists hesitate. Because you're no longer giving them emotional tells. You're no longer bleeding in public. You're no longer explaining your scars like they're conversation starters. You carry them like weapons now, holstered, not swinging. And here's the paradox that really messes with them. You didn't become cruel. You became selective. You didn't shut down your empathy. You weaponized your discernment. You can still feel deeply. You just don't offer access to everyone with a pulse and an opinion. That's angel discipline with demon instincts. You learned when to extend grace and when to withdraw oxygen. So now the area reacts to you like a fault line. Everything feels stable until you step into the room. Then suddenly people feel exposed. They feel seen without being studied, judged without being accused, measured without being measured back. Because you're no longer playing the game of appearances. You see through posture, through tone, through intention. You feel the lie before it's spoken, and you don't call it out. You let it collapse under its own weight. That restraint, that's what unnerves them. They don't know whether you noticed, and that uncertainty eats at them. They keep replaying interactions with you in their heads. Did they mean that? Did he catch that? Why didn't she react? Because you didn't give them feedback, and silence is a mirror. You didn't need to confront anyone. You didn't need to assert dominance. You didn't need to raise your voice or prove intelligence or flex status. You simply stopped participating in low-frequency exchanges. You stepped out of emotional poverty and into internal wealth. And when someone does that, environments feel it like a pressure drop. The rules shift, the hierarchy blurs, the masks start slipping. That's why people suddenly treat you differently. Not openly, subtly, a little more careful, a little more polite, a little more distant. Because on some level, They sense you've crossed a line they can't uncross with you. You're not who you were, and you're not who they can control. You're the version that survived long enough to understand. And understanding is lethal to manipulation. You understand how fear works, how loyalty is tested, how kindness is exploited, how chaos reveals truth. You understand that pain was never your enemy. It was your instructor. Every betrayal sharpened your perception. Every loss stripped away illusion. Every moment you thought you were breaking. You were actually shedding the skin that made you readable. That's why the area went weird. Because systems rely on you staying readable. You stopped giving them a pattern, and now they're scrambling to find one. They start projecting, guessing, whispering, overanalyzing your movements like you're a variable they forgot to account for. They don't know if you're dangerous. They don't know if you're merciful. They don't know if you're done or just getting started. And that uncertainty keeps them up at night. You've become the kind of presence that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that bends atmospheres without effort. The kind that walks through chaos untouched because you've already survived worse internally. You don't chase control anymore. You embody it. And here's the final truth they don't want to admit, even to themselves. The area didn't start acting weird because you did something wrong. It started acting weird because you did something right. You aligned, you consolidated, you stepped into coherence. And coherence disrupts dysfunctional systems like a shockwave. So let them act strange. Let them hesitate. Let them recalibrate. You're not here to comfort environments that thrived on your confusion. You're here as proof that evolution doesn't ask permission. And once someone like you changes, the world doesn't stay normal around them ever again. And the strangest part? You didn't even try to shake anything up. That's what makes it so unsettling. You weren't plotting. You weren't scheming. You weren't trying to send a message. You simply acted in alignment with who you've become instead of who you were trained to be. And alignment is louder than rebellion ever could be. You stopped over-explaining yourself, stopped softening your truth to keep others comfortable, stopped reacting like your worth was negotiable. And the moment you did, the environment started malfunctioning. Because most places, most circles, most systems are built on an unspoken agreement. You play your role, and they'll tolerate your existence. You stay emotional, they stay in control. You stay predictable, they stay calm. You stay hungry for approval, they stay powerful. You violated that agreement without signing a new one. That's why people don't know how to treat you now. They're used to versions of you that needed something: validation, belonging, safety, explanation. But this version doesn't need, it chooses. And choice changes the entire power dynamic. They can feel that you're no longer scanning the room for acceptance. You're scanning for truth, for alignment, for resonance. And when you don't find it, you don't complain. You disanger. That withdrawal is louder than any confrontation. Because when someone stops needing you, you lose leverage. And when enough people sense that they've lost leverage over you, the whole atmosphere tightens. Conversations become careful. Jokes become filtered. People start watching their tone, their timing, their distance. Not because you threatened them, because you no longer flinch. You used to absorb disrespect and transmute it into self-doubt. You used to swallow discomfort to keep the peace. You used to negotiate your own boundaries like they were optional. But now your boundaries don't argue. They exist, quiet, immovable, non-negotiable. That's why the room feels heavier when you enter, not darker, denser, You carry weight now. Not ego weight, gravity. The kind that comes from surviving things that would have erased weaker versions of you. The kind that comes from sitting alone with your thoughts long enough to know which voices are yours and which ones were planted there to keep you small. You stopped confusing noise for truth, and that clarity makes chaotic environments unstable. People sense that you're no longer driven by emotion alone. You still feel, but you don't hemorrhage. You still care, but you don't chase. You still love, but you don't beg. That balance is rare, and rarity disrupts averages. You've become an anomaly. An anomaly doesn't have to do anything to change the equation. Its existence does that automatically. That's why the energy feels off, why people are acting strange, why some are drawn to you while others instinctively back away. Because on a subconscious level, they recognize that you're no longer operating on the same frequency. You don't move fast. You don't move loud. You move true. And truth is uncomfortable to those who survive on distortion. They start wondering what you know, what you see, what you've figured out. They replay past moments, realizing you were watching when they thought you were distracted, listening when they thought you were checked out, calculating when they assumed you were emotional, because pain sharpened you. It taught you how to read silence, how to notice micro-shifts, how to sense intent behind words. You learn to listen to what people don't say, and that makes you dangerous in a world full of half-truths. But here's the twist that keeps them guessing. You're not hunting anyone. You're not seeking revenge. You're not out to expose. You're not trying to dominate. You're just no longer available for nonsense. And that absence of drama, that refusal to engage, that calm, grounded, unshakable presence, that's what unsettles them the most. Because chaos knows how to fight chaos. But it doesn't know how to fight someone who's already made peace with themselves. You've integrated the darkness instead of pretending it isn't there. You know what you're capable of, and because you know, you don't have to prove it. That self-awareness creates a restraint that feels ominous to those who act on impulse. They don't know whether you're merciful or simply patient. And patience feels like a countdown to people who live in fear. So the area keeps acting weird, not because you're changing it deliberately, but because it's adjusting to the fact that you won't bend anymore, that you won't shrink, that you won't betray yourself to keep others comfortable. You became internally aligned, and alignment radiates. It forces decisions. It exposes fractures. It reveals who can stand in your presence, and who can't. You didn't create tension. You revealed it. You didn't disrupt peace. You exposed false harmony. And now everything around you has a choice: evolve to meet you, or reveal itself by reacting. Either way, you keep walking, calm, clear, unapologetic. Because once you do that one thing, once you choose yourself without asking permission, the world never feels normal around you again. And it's not because you're cursed, it's because you're no longer asleep. And once you're awake like this, there's no pretending you didn't feel it. You feel the way streets seem quieter when you pass through them. How laughter dies down just a notch. How people suddenly become aware of their own posture, their own tone, their own intentions. You didn't demand respect. Respect reorganized itself around you. That's the part they can't articulate. They just know something changed, and they can't trace it back to a single moment without admitting it was you. You stopped negotiating your presence. Before, you used to enter rooms carrying invisible apologies for your intensity, for your depth, for your silence, for your intelligence, for your scars. You tried to make yourself digestible, palatable, safe. And the world rewarded that by taking pieces of you without asking. But that one thing you did, that moment you chose not to explain, not to chase, not to soften, not to react. That was you reclaiming ownership of your own energy. And energy knows when it's no longer available for theft. That's why interactions feel strained now. People keep trying old tactics that used to work. Provocation, flattery, guilt, familiarity, and watching them slide right off you. They're not used to someone who doesn't need to win, doesn't need to be right, doesn't need to be liked. They're used to mirrors. You became a wall. Not a wall that shuts people out, but a wall that tells the truth about force. Some people lean against it and feel safe. Others hit it at full speed and hurt themselves. Either way, you don't move. And that stillness, that's what rewired the atmosphere. You learn something most never do. Chaos is loud, but power is quiet. Rage makes noise. Control changes gravity. You've lived long enough in the dark to understand both sides. You've seen what unchecked fury does. You've felt what endless empathy costs. So you chose a third thing: discipline. Discipline of thought, discipline of emotion, discipline of response. That's when saint and psychopath stopped fighting inside you and started cooperating. The saint taught you restraint. The psychopath taught you timing. Together they made you precise. So now when someone disrespects you, you don't flare up. You don't freeze. You clock it, file it, and adjust your distance accordingly. That scares people more than confrontation ever could. Because distance is a verdict. Silence is a conclusion. They don't get closure with you anymore. They get consequences. And consequences don't announce themselves. You can feel the shift in how information moves around you. Things reach you faster. Whispers travel ahead of you. Decisions get made in rooms you're not in, but about you. Not because you're plotting, but because you're no longer passive. You became a variable. And variables make planners nervous. They don't know if you're observing, preparing, or simply uninterested. They don't know if you're 10 steps ahead or completely detached. And the truth? Sometimes you're both. That duality is what unbalances them, because they can't pin you to a single narrative: hero, villain, victim, threat, savior. You don't confirm or deny, you let them project. And projection reveals more about them than anything you could ever say. That's another thing you learned through pain. People tell on themselves when you stop filling the silence for them, when you stop correcting their assumptions, when you stop clarifying your intentions. You let them talk, let them assume, let them reveal. And suddenly the weirdness makes sense. The awkward pauses, the forced politeness, the sudden defensiveness, the unearned hostility. They're reacting to themselves, reflected back by your calm. You're no longer absorbing the chaos of the room. You're letting it circulate without you. That creates a vacuum, and vacuums expose pressure points. Weak structures collapse. Fake confidence wobbles. Shallow authority panics, because they can feel you don't need the room anymore. You could leave and be fine. That independence is radioactive. It changes how people treat you because it changes how much access they have. You don't overshare. You don't explain your next move. You don't emotionally invest in people who haven't earned proximity. And that selectiveness, that's the final nail in the illusion. You used to be available. Now you're intentional. Availability made you useful. Intentionality makes you powerful. So yes, the area started acting weird. Not because you became hostile, but because you became sovereign. You took back authorship of your own nervous system. You stopped letting external chaos dictate internal weather. You became centered. And centered people disrupt off-balance worlds. Some will feel drawn to you, not romantically, not socially, but existentially. They'll want to be near your calm. Others will feel irritated without knowing why. Your presence highlights what they're avoiding in themselves.